They didn't sell one beer that day.
1,000 people, they didn't sell one
I'm
beer.
telling you, not only that,
No fight.
they developed no fights.
But if they had the kosher hot dog stand, they would have been all right.
No. But you know what they did also? They davened an Ashkenazic mincha and then a Scottish Amira, or vice versa.
Yeah.
So everyone was happy.
I think one of Schottenstein's davened mincha.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Well, that's understandable.
1,000 people say, hey, Shmei Robert.
Right. It was really something.
Right.
Something else.
And the guys,
Can
they were actually crying. Oh gosh.
Something else.
I was with them in the garden 15 years prior to that.
Well, if I remember correctly, there's a special bracha you're supposed to say when you have huge numbers.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Right?
But
Like that.
let me tell you.
I think my kids, my grandchildren.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Zev is here. We can get started, right, Zev? Zev's my watchdog. And well, he watches that I'm doing it right.
Who are you?
Gives me the good right source. Okay, we're going to start with our learning sponsors. Today's date is the 12th, right? Okay. Year of learning by the children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of Toby Paris, Saratova Bat Yisrael Dov in her memory. Charlie Gelfenstein and Sam Levine in memory of Ramona Levine, Rachumata Bat Asher. Friends of Nina Moynester, Nechama Azna Bat Yitzchak Aharon. Many friends of Stephen Vigdor, Lezecha Nishmat, Simcha Melech Ben Meir Leib Halevi. Friends of Marcy Kurtz in memory of her great niece, Leah Bracha. Month of learning by Stanley Presser in memory of his wife, Chayalea Bat Ze'ev HaKohen. In honor of Vicky and Larry Fish by their children and grandchildren. Rebecca Witansky, Louis and Susan Witansky, in memory of Rebecca's uncle and Louis's brother, Pesach Ben Yusuf Yehudis. Carol and Josh Sanborn in memory of her mother, Yita Bat Nachman Ben Yomen. We have a week of learning by Shmuel and Henya Hadassah Novik in memory of his mother, Leah Bat Yaakov. Lenny Bahar in memory of her husband, Yitzchak Ben Menachem. Evelyn and Isaac Blachor in memory of her sister, Shendel Yehudis Bas Harav Yeshayahu Yitzchak Halevi. Sharon and Michael Glass in memory of her father, Shlomo Ben Yosef HaKohen. Jack Gilman in memory of his father, Yitzchak Ben Avram Chaim. And he said today is the 12th, so we don't have still any days of learning at all yet.
Did you say the Hearn?
No?
You know who is the guy.
No. May the Shemas have an aliyah, crank Rafi about the Yeshua Shema Tzliya, and the Chol B'nai Yisrael a good Gebenshtia. Okay. All right, so I brought an extra sefer today in case we needed additional diagrams. Where we're going to start, as I indicated yesterday, there's no way that I was going to be able to finish all of yesterday's daf in the time allotted, and I had added time to what the bulletin had said. Okay, so we are about halfway down the Amud on Sadi Vav Amud Beis. Okay, I will tell you in a moment where we're going to actually pick up. Okay, the easiest way to tell is if you look in the Rashi, about halfway down the page, you see where it says Matnitin
Yes.
in the Rashi.
All right.
Okay, well, just sort of in the Gemara, about a line or two above that is where we're going to pick up.
What's the first word of line?
Okay, I'm going to go back, right, to the fact where it says, okay, on Sadi's Vav Amud Beis, all right,
96
right, that's, yeah, 996, right, 4, right, in Art Scroll. The Gemara went very quickly as a review. Nasa Isha Umeit, that was the 9+ year old who married a woman and he died, right? Tanina Laho Detanu Rabbanan. We learned this as the rabbis taught. Okay. Shotev Katan Shenasu Vametu. Okay, a person who is mentally incompetent and a minor who marry and that person dies. Nishotein Pturot min hachalitza umin hayibum. Okay, their wives are exempt from either chalitza or yibum. Okay. Now I did pick up the next piece, but that's where we really need to start now. That's where we're starting. Okay. So it's Sadi Vav Amud Beis 96b, and as Erwin said, it's probably Art Scroll 4, right?
B5, really.
Okay. All right. So then the Gemara picks up, still continuing to talk about the 9+-year-old. All right. Right. And that's what it's going to continue. Okay. Ben Tesha v'chulei, kashehe mishehigdil. So that was the example in the Mishnah that he had relations with his Yibama when he was still a minor, but when he became an adult, okay, he married another woman. Okay, that was what the Gemara, the Mishnah said. Okay, and then the question was, and he dies, what has to be done for each of those women? Because you've got two women. The one he had, who he did Yibum with when he was a minor, and then the woman he married when he was an adult, right? Okay, so that's where we're really picking up the new material for today. Okay. By the way, I did take time just to fill in. I did take time yesterday to look and compare on the that Mishnah with the five women, the diagram in Art Scroll versus the diagram in Koren Steinsaltz. And I have to be honest, in this case, I found the Koren Steinsaltz diagram and explanation much clearer, okay? And I would suggest if you go back to do a chazara on that, the order that the Art Scroll had, reverse the order of having it husband instead of wife, husband, wife, husband, wife, husband. Reverse the order and do it husband, wife, husband, wife, husband, wife. And I think that will make it much easier. Because then you can figure, oh, X marries Y. Okay, they have a daughter. X dies. What happens? Y marries Z. Okay, they have a daughter. Then those daughters are half sisters of each other by Y. Okay, and that's how Koren Steinsaltz did the explanation. Okay, so what happened here? Okay, all right, so now, oh, I lost one. Okay, so now we go on. So we've explained, I had to mention that because it came back to, okay? Okay, all right, then. All right, let's go on now. V'yasu bi'at ben Tesha plus kima'amar begadol. And the rabbis went and they declared, I'm going to say, or established that the 9+-year-old's sexual liaison was really parallel to a marriage proposition by an adult. Okay? V'tidchet sarah miyibum. Okay? And put off then the issue then that this was the reason why Yibum had to be done in a certain way because of a co-wife. Now, Amar Rav, says Rav is going to challenge. Lo asu bi'at ben Tesha kima amar begadol. Rav says that they did not make the sexual liaison of the 9+-year-old equal to the marriage proposition of the adult. Ushmuel Amar Asu, Va'asu. And Shmuel disagrees and says, yes, they did make it like the marriage proposition number one. And number two, the second element was in regards to the issue of the sister-in-law. Okay. V'chein amar Rabbi Yochanan asu va'asu. And likewise, Rabbi Yochanan said they did and they did. Okay. They also made the bia of the katan like a ma'amar of the gadol. Okay, that was one aspect, and the other aspect as to what it applied to the sister-in-law. Via asu, asks the Gemara, did they really do that? Tana'aihi. This was a machloket Tanaim, says the Gemara. Hach, Tana, this particular Tana, the arba'a achin gazar mishum sarah. Okay, that back in our first parak of Arba Achim, okay, they established the idea based on the concern about the co-wife. Okay, Va'ashma'inin begadol, and they taught it the laws of Yibum in regards to an adult. Vehu hadin bekatan. But this seems to be the same situation regarding Yibum vis-a-vis a minor. Okay. Whereas Vahai, but in our case, in our Mishnah, right? Da amar gadol mishum de begadol kai. Okay. Where there they're talking about an adult vis-a-vis an adult. Okay. That's what the Arba Achin Mishnah was talking about. Vahai Tana Dahacha. But our Tana, who gave us this Mishnah, and in this Mishnah it claims that the Bia Avakatan was like the Ma'amar of the Gadol, okay, which seems to be a different outlook, right? Svira le Asu. He holds that they made this practice that way. Velo Gazar Mishum Tzara. And they didn't require it simply as a matter of concern for the status of the co-wife, right? Va'ashma'inin bekatan. And here, okay, we're going to learn it based on the whole issues pertaining to a minor doing Yibum, as opposed to in Arba Achin, where it talked primarily about an adult doing Yibum. Vahu hadin begadol. And he feels that this applies also in the status of the adult. Okay?
They're gonna let the katan do this. Why don't they let him do chalitza and be done with it?
Good question. Good question. The Gemara is going to have to deal with that, because if you're going to initially suggest, as our Mishnah said, that the only time the bia invalidates the brothers if the bia is done first, okay, then what about if that's the case? Your question is very appropriate, Erwin, because then why couldn't the 9-year-old have done some other act?
If you look at the Lashon of the Mishnah says Shabbat, which is a Lashon b'diavad. I mean,
Okay, I'll accept that, but I'll also accept the fact that Shabbat is really, while it talks about Bia, what it's really saying is it's as if he takes her in marriage. Okay? Okay?
right.
Because the Oraita, Kesef, Shtar, or Bia was the equivalent of being Koner. Okay? But in this case, all right, tied into Erwin's question, okay, the Gemara is arguing, wait, those other brothers, they can do any one of 4 things, and that's going to invalidate that 9-year-old. So the Gemara has really asked the question, are you sure it's only an act done initially by the 9-year-old? Maybe if he does it later, and it's Bia, it still also invalidates. And it doesn't depend when that 9-year-old does it. So that adds again to Erwin's question. Does it have to dafka be, especially be an act of Bia? Okay. Gemara is going to suggest to us, hold on a second. Maybe if that 9-year-old did something else, like give her a get or do chalitza, like Erwin is questioning, maybe that also has the same impact as invalidating the other brothers.
Are
Okay.
they saying the Kesef Shara Malacha applies, Kesef Shara B applies to a minor also?
That's what the Torah says. Those are the three ways to make.
A minor can't,
regardless
a
of-
minor can't make a kinyan. I mean, that's,
Well, that's what we just saw.
I mean, that's.
It
yeah,
just said, we just read,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
That if somebody was right, that's why I went back to that, right? That it said that if he's not mentally competent or a minor, all right, that wife then gets neither. Why? Because he's not a ben dat. That's the point, exactly.
So a
Okay,
minor could do yibum, but not chalitza. Minor is excluded from. chalitza.
let's see what the Gemara says. Good question.
Right.
Okay, all right, so what happens? All right, so we saw, right, Hashmin b'katan v'hu hadin b'gada. V'hai de-kamar b'katan, the b'katan kai, says the Gemara, right? I
But
think
this paragraph is talking
about the minor,
fine.
right? Because it's talking about minors, and that's what it's dealing with. Now we get to another, right? Svira Leva, right? I lost my place for a second. Okay, Rabbi Elazar, right? I think that's where we are.
Yes. Also
Okay,
right.
Rabbi Elazar Amar Lishma'ata Be Midrasha Velo Amra Mishmei de Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Elazar, who we need to know was a student of Rabbi Yochanan, recited this lesson in the base midrash without attributing it to Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, now what happens? Shema Rav Yochanan, Rabbi Yochanan heard about this, ikpad, and he got angry, right? Well, then what happened? Two other of the sages thought to go and try to appease Rabbi Yochanan. All legabe Rabbi Ami v'Rabbi Asi. Rabbi Ami v'Rabbi Asi came in and they went to try to appease Rabbi Yochanan. Amrule, and they said to him, Lo kach haya hama'aseh b'beit haKnesset shel Tiberia. Wasn't there once an incident in the synagogue in Tiberia, right? And what was that? Beneged sheyesh barosho glus tara, right? Shenichlaku bo Rabbi Elazar v'Rabbi Yossi. Wasn't there a situation where there was a bolt that was at the end of a knob, and those were used for I would call it door stops or lock doors on Shabbos, and there was a machloket whether you could use that kind of a utensil on Shabbos because it could drag and cause a furrow in the ground, right? Between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Yossi, ad shekaru Sefer Torah b'chamatan, until they tore a Sefer Torah in their anger. So the Gemara has a side question. Karu Sakadafka? Do you really think they would have torn a Sefer Torah? Ela ema shenikra Sefer Torah b'chamatan. Rather, I would say that a Sefer Torah was torn accidentally or whatever, okay, as a result of their anger. So the implication was they were trying to tell Rabbi Yochanan, don't get fahitzed, all right? If you get overly angry, look what kind of a situation it can cause, all right? But Rabbi Yochanan did not accept their attempt at appeasement, as we're going to say, okay? V'haya sham Rabbi Yossi ben Kizma, and Rabbi Yossi ben Kizma was there. Amar, and he says, Tameya ani im lo yeh beit haKnesset zo avodat kochavim. I would be amazed, he said, if ultimately, as a result of this expression of anger and not shalom bias, that this synagogue is going to turn into something else, a place of idol worship. V'chein hava, says the Gemara, and that's actually what happened. Now, what about Rabbi Yochanan? Hadar akpid fei. He continued and became even more angry, based on what Rabbi Ami, excuse me, and Rabbi Asi said to him, right? So what happened? Amar, chavruta nami, all of a sudden, okay, you're coming and talking to me as if Rabbi Eliezer is a colleague of mine and not my student, okay? So now we see a further attempt to appease Rabbi Yochanan. O legabe Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi, okay, Amar le. And now another colleague or Talmid Chaver, it's hard to tell, okay, namely Rabbi Yaakov bar Adi, comes to Rabbi Yochanan. And he says to him as follows, Kasher tziva Hashem et Moshe avdo, kein tziva Moshe et Yehoshua. The same way Hashem commanded Moshe, his servant, so Moshe commanded Joshua. V'chein asa Yehoshua, and likewise then Yehoshua taught to the people. Lo hesir davar mikol asher tziva Hashem et Moshe. And he did not eliminate any single thing that Hashem had taught Moshe when he taught it to the people. Okay? V'chi al kol davar she'amar Yoshua hava omer lahem kach amar li Moshe. And is it possible that for every single thing that Joshua taught, he was going to say, thus taught me Moshe? Okay? Ela Yehoshua Yoshev v'doresh stam. But rather Joshua sat and he was expounding in general. In other words, without always attributing it to Moshe. V'hakol yodin shetorato shel Moshe. And everyone knew that it was the lessons that Moshe was teaching him. Af Rabbi Eliezer Talmidcha Yoshev v'doresh stam. So likewise, Rabbi Eliezer, your student, sits and expounds in general. V'hakol yodin ki shelchahi. And all know then that he was your student and that he's teaching what you taught. Okay? So now Rabbi Yochanan responds to them the following. Amar lehem. So he says back to Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi, Mipnei ma iatem yodin lefayes keben idi chavereinu. Why is it that you do not know how to appease the same way that our colleague, okay, Rabbi Idi, son of Idi, okay? So the Gemara now asks, okay, I'm going to get a sefer for Rebecca, all right, and I'll be right, and we'll continue in a moment. Okay.
I'm not a Talmid Chacham.
Pay attention with your hearing aids, Mr. Kipperman. My girlfriend, my tiny. Yeah, but this is the.
Yeah, give him one.
Take this. I don't know if it's any easier now. All right. We're going to go and then we'll, okay, so I'm just going to finish up this page and then we'll get to the new stuff. I know I'm taking a long time, but okay, so the Gemara asks, Rabbi Yochanan, my Talmud kapid kulihai, why was Rabbi Yochanan so angry? The Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, in the name of Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, my dichtiv, what is it written? Agura b'halecha olamim. I will dwell in your tent for worlds, right? For worlds, forever. In other words, implying two worlds. Okay. V'chi efshar lo la'adam lagur b'shnei olamim. Is it possible for somebody to live in two worlds? Ela amar David. But as was said in David in the Psalms, Lafia Kadosh Baruch Hu, Ribbono Shel Olam, addressing the Kadosh Baruch Hu, Yehi Ratzon. Okay, as we go over now to Tzadi Zion, top of, all right, 97A. All right. Okay, everybody. Okay. Sheyamru davar shmua mipi. Okay, ba'olam hazeh. If one says a lesson, okay, from about the mouth of a sage in this world, da'amar, as was said, Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, as said by Rabbi Yochanan ben Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, kol tamid chacham she'omrim davar shmu'ah mipiv ba'olam hazeh. Any sage who recites a particular lesson, okay, from and cites the name of that sage in this world, sfatav dovavot bekever. Then it's as if the lips of the deceased sage are moving in the grave. In other words, he gets. That's why the whole idea of citing something b'shem amro. Okay, we see that this can be the basis for that concept. Okay, all right. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak ben Zeira, v'itema Shimon Nazira, and Rabbi Yitzchak ben Zeira and others say it was Shimon Nazira said the following: Ma'ikra, what's the pasuk that gives a basis to this idea? Okay, and Art Scroll spells out the pasuk there, I think.
Sure.
Right, from Shir HaShirim.
Right.
Right. Okay, I'm just. All right. Okay. V'chikach ki yayin hatov holech ledodi lemesharim dovev siftei yishenin. All right. That's the pasuk. All right. Okay. So what is that compared to, that pasuk? All right. Saying that it's like the following. Kikomer shel anavim. It's like a pillar of grapes. All right. Ma komer shel anavim. Kevan shebamaniach adam etzba'o alav miyad dovev. The same way that if a person puts their hand or finger on a pillar of grapes, a container of grape juice or boiling, all right, what happens? It's going to start shaking. It's going to move. Af tamidei chachamim, kiven she'omrim davar shmu'ah mipiyam ba'olam hazeh. So likewise, when sages recite a lesson from the mouth of another sage in this world, siftoteim dovavot b'kever. Their lips sort of move in the grave. Right? So it's that comparison. You put your hand on water, the water's going to move, or on grapes, on wine. So the same thing. Okay? All right. We're now back. Echad ben tisha shanim v'chulei. We said the same law that applied to a 9+-year-old applied to a 20-year-old male who did not show any signs of physical maturity. Right? That was the Mishnah.
Correct.
Okay, so what happens? The text continues. Urminhu, but we have a challenge to this. Okay, Ben Esrim Shana Shelo Hevi Shtei Sa'arot. Okay, if there someone is 20 years old and he hasn't shown physical signs of maturity, Yaviu Raya Shehu Ben Esrim. He should show proof that he is 20 years old. Okay, Vehu Hasaris. And then we will determine that he is a saris, a man that is not capable of performing sexually. Velo choletz, velo miyabein. And as a result, that man does neither chalitza nor yibum. Okay. Bat esrim shana, shelo hivia shtei sa'arot. A woman who is 20 years of age and hasn't shown physical signs of maturity, Yaviu Raya Shehi Bat Esrim, she needs to bring proof that she is 20 years of age. Vehi ha'ilonit. And then we will consider her a woman incapable of giving birth, right? Lo choletzet velo mityabemet. Okay, and if she were married and her husband died without children, she is exempt from either chalitza or yibum. Okay. So the Gemara then says, Ha itmarala. But on this, the following was said. Amar Shmuel bar Yitzchak Amar Rav, in the name of Rav. Vahu shenol dulo simane saris. No, we're talking about a man who from childbirth could have been sterile. Okay? Amar Rava, says Rava.
He
Daikan
was 20, but in addition to being 20, he had one of the other simonim
other
of iron.
of being
He
right.
had a
In
squeaky voice or
whatever.
all the other things.
No facial hair, all
Right.
of these other siman.
Right.
Right.
In addition to being
Right.
20.
Right. Vahu shenaldulo simane saris. So Shmuel is not arguing, but he's adding, he's mosif here
Right.
to that fact that what we're saying is to determine the person to be a saris, you need more than just one single example. Okay? So what happens? Amar Rava, says Rava, Dai Kanami, and we can determine this by the language, explicit language of the text. The Katani Vehu Hasaris, and he is a
Sorry.
Saris. Okay? Shmamina, indeed, that's what we learn. V'chilo noldulo simane saris ad kama, and if he was not born with aspects of sterility or of lack of physical male maturity. Okay, at what age? Tane Devei Rabbi Chia, it was taught in the Academy of Rabbi Chia, ad rov shnotav. Then we would consider him a saris all his life, basically.
Right. After 35.
After, well, the Gemara doesn't tell me that.
No, right.
Right?
Yeah. I mean,
Right.
Shivim Shana. So,
Right. Right?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Ki atu lakame de Rava. Okay. And if a situation came that a young man came before Rava, and he was, let's say, 20 for the sake of the Gemara, and there was a question about whether or not he was a saris, what would Rava tell him? Okay. The following. Kachush, if he was a skinny guy or very thin, Amarlo, he would tell him, Zilu Avruhu, go and add some weight. Ve'i Bari, if he was overweight significantly, Amarlo, he would say to him, Zilu Akhashuhu, go on a diet. Okay? Dahani Simani, right? That these particular signs, namely, we're talking about basically, okay.
There's two.
Yeah, we're talking about hair in one's private area, right? Zimnan denatre michamat kachishuta. There are times where it could fall off because of obesity. V'zimnan denatre michamat baryuta. Or let me reverse it. There are times that it falls off because of extreme thinness. There are times that it falls off because of obesity. All right? Hadrana la Chaisha Rabba. And we finish that paragraph. Okay, we're trying to move right along. Now, I want to tell you, as we get into, we'll do the Mishnah. Okay, and as we continue with the Mishnah, we're going to get to a number of riddles.
Yes.
Okay?
Very interesting. Very interesting.
I was using both this one and Steinsaltz. A lot of the Rishonim discuss why all of a sudden do we have a series of riddles here. I'm just going to give
I
one.
don't remember. Is there anywhere else in Shas that they have?
No. Okay. So they give different Meiri, the Radbaz, different Rishonim give different answers. The simplest can be I'm going to say, and none of them give this answer, is that it primarily tries to show, okay, the different attitude between how Gentile society may interact sexually with parts of their family versus how Jews interact with parts of their family, because we follow the laws of the Torah and the rabbis and things like that. That's just my suggestion as to why, okay, because if we're talking about people having relations, okay, and how can they be related one to another, I'm suggesting this is a possible idea as to why it comes here. I don't have any proof, okay? That's my own pshat, okay? Now we get to a new Mishnah, new chapter, new situations, okay? We've said, according to the Torah, that we have a requirement that people cannot marry certain relatives of family members, right? For example, we've talked about you marry a woman, you can't marry her sister. That's one example of erva d'oraita. But we have not only erva d'oraita, we have shniot, okay, rabbinic requirements of what we'll call for the moment secondary relatives, right? You can't marry your wife's grandmother. You shouldn't marry your wife's granddaughter, okay? Things like that. I chose those particular examples, okay, and we'll see why, right? Okay, so if one marries the relatives, okay, al ha'anusa va'al ha'mefuta, in regarding that one could marry a relative, a secondary relative, of a woman who was raped or seduced. Okay, now the question is by whom? We'll get to it. Ha'ones v'ha'mefateh al ha'nisu'ah. Okay, one who rapes or seduces a woman to whom one is married. Okay, if the woman is married and they rape or seduce her, chayav, then he is either punishable by koret or by death. Okay, and I don't mean b'yedei shamayim either. Okay, all right. No se adam anusat aviv. A man may marry a woman raped by his father, umufutet aviv, or seduced by his father. Anusat beno umufutat beno, raped by his son, okay, or was seduced by his son. Rabbi Yehuda oser ba'anusat aviv umufutat aviv. Rabbi Yehuda prohibits someone from marrying a woman who was raped by his father or seduced by his father. New Gemara. Tanina laha. We've learned this, right? Okay. Namely, Detanu Rabbanan. Didn't we learn this already in a Braita? Right. Okay. Anas Isha mutarli se bita. If one raped a woman, one is permitted to marry her daughter. Nasa Isha. If he married a woman, asurli se bita. He is prohibited from marrying her daughter. Or minhu. But we have a part of the Braita that challenges this. Hanit an min ha'isha. One who is suspected or accused, or there's rumors that he's had an affair with a particular woman. Okay, asur ba'ima, he is prohibited regarding her mother, ubabita with the daughter, uba'achota with her sister, midirabanan, rabbinically. The kol hecha deika isura midirabanan, and where there is a prohibition regarding the rabbis, Tane nisu'in lechatchila. So let us teach that this deals with marriage initially. Kitnan matnidin. But when our Mishnah was taught, la'achar mita, we're talking about the situation of it being after the death of that woman, the woman who was raped or seduced. Okay?
I mean, ask you a question.
Yeah.
It bothers me. If you have a guy who wants to convert,
And he's married,
We'll get to it.
or he's married to one, or it's gonna get to?
We may get to it.
Okay. good.
Okay? I don't want to stop your question, but
What about the needs of a woman and he's just gonna be married to someone that raped her?
no,
No.
that's what they're saying. The rabbis, she cannot be married to the person who raped or seduced her. But a different relative could marry that woman. Okay? All right. Now, let's go on. Minahani Mili, on what basis do we know this? The Tanu Rabbanan, that the rabbis taught. Bikulan ne'emar shchiva. In all of the examples of arayas, we find that the language used is shechiva, lying with her. V'kan ne'emar kicha. But in this particular case, we see they use the language of taking, okay? Acquiring, as if, all right? So what's the difference then between lying with a woman and taking, acquiring her? Is one done one way or another way? Lomar lach derek lechuchin asrat Torah. This comes to tell us that the method of acquiring a woman, okay? In other words, any of those three methods that we defined of the Torah, okay? The Torah prohibits in this situation. Okay? Amale Rav Papa la Abaye. And Rav Papa says to Abaye, Ela me ata gabe achoto dichti. But in regarding to the Torah's statement in terms of his sister, it's written, Ish asher yikach et achoto, bat aviv ubat imo. One who takes that of his sister, whether the daughter of the father or daughter of the mother. Hachi nami derech kichahu da'asur. Here too, again, we see that this is the idea of taking. In other words, acquiring this woman when it is not a proper marriage. That is prohibited. Derech shchiva shali. Does this mean that simply having a promiscuous situation with her is permitted?
No, it's a caution.
Right, it's a question.
Question.
Amarle v'kuchin kative b'Torah stam. Okay, the answer given is the phrase acquiring the woman, okay, is just used in general in the
Right.
Torah. Hara'ui l'kicha. In other words, it means kicha, one who is worthy of being married, taken in marriage. Hara'ui l'shchiva. What about the fact, are we saying that one might be subject or worthy to simply having promiscuous liaison? Shchiva, that is promiscuity, right? Rabba Amar, says Rabba, Anas Isha, if the woman was raped, Mutar Lisa Bita Mehacha, that we say it's permitted to marry her daughter. On what basis? Kativ, it's written, Ervat bat bincha ubat bitcha lo tigaleh, that the nakedness of the daughter of your son, the daughter of your daughter, should not be revealed. Habat bina dida, ubat bita dida. Here, it seems to be the daughter of her son. Here, okay, the daughter of her daughter. Gale, that seems to be the issue that may be revealed. In other words, one's grandchild.
The pasuk seems to apply his from
him,
but
and
not his wife.
hers. Uktiv ervat, but then it's also written, ervat isha ubita lo tigaleh, that the nakedness of the woman, in other words, his wife and her daughter, should not be revealed. Namely, et bat bina ve'et bat bita lo tikach. That's the rest of the pasuk. Again, the daughter of her son, the daughter of her daughter, you cannot take. Ha-ketzad, how is this possible? Kan, maybe we'll say in one case, we're talking about ba'onsin, okay, that it applies to a rape situation. Kan b'nisuin. Here we may talk about a marriage situation. So the Gemara answers, Ipuch ana, I would reverse it. Arayot, in regards to these prohibited Torah relationships, Sa'er, kinship, Kativ Baho. That's what's written there. Benisu'in, Ika Sa'er. With marriage, there is a sense of kinship. Ba'onsin, Leka Sa'er. But with a situation of rape, there is no sense of kinship. Going on. Rabbi Yehuda Oser ba'anusat aviv. Remember, our Mishnah said that Rabbi Yehuda forbade, a situation where one's father raped or seduced a woman for the son to marry that same woman. Amar Rav Gil, says Rav Gidl, Amar Rav, in the name of Rav. My Tama de Rav Yehuda, what was Rav Yehuda's reasoning? Dichtiv, because it's written, Lo yikach ish et eshet aviv, v'lo yigalek knaf aviv, that a man should not take the wife of his father and not reveal the robe or garment of his father. What does that mean? Knaf shira'a aviv lo yigaleh. The robe, in other words, the woman who was part of the liaison with one's father, lo yigaleh, should not be revealed. That's the drasha. Mimai de ba'anusa kativ. And on what basis do we say that this might apply to a rape situation? Dichtiv me'iluya tikra. It was written above it, and a pasuk above that pasuk, another pasuk that says, "V'natan ha'ish hashochev ima la'aviha na'ara chamishim kesef." Okay, that if that's the knas, the fine paying for the woman that's raped. V'rabanan, and the rabbis, how do they handle that? Ihava samichle kedika amat. If the two psukim were next to each other, then I would understand it as you've indicated. Hashta delo samichle. But here, since they are not connected one to the other, mibayale lekederav anan. We need it to satisfy the statement of Rav Anan. The Amar Rav Anan Amar Shmuel, who said in the name of Shmuel, B'shomeret Yabam Shel Aviv Akatuv Medaber. We're talking about a woman, a sister-in-law, who was waiting for the person's father to do Yibum. That's what it's talking about. Umay Knaf Aviv. So what do we mean here when we say the robe, so to speak, of the father? Okay, Knaf Hara'ui La'aviv Lo Yigaleh. We're talking about, in essence, a woman who was suitable for the father. Should not be. Gemara is going to get to that, Marty. Baruch Shekivanta. Okay? All right. V'tepuk le mishum dadato. So why learn it that way, says the Gemara, just as Marty says. Learn it that she's prohibited to him because she's his aunt. Okay? La'avor aleh b'shnei lavin. But they learned it that way in order to teach two prohibitions. One, because she's an aunt, and one because she was Shomeret Yabam. Okay? V'tepuk le mishum Yabam alashuk. So why don't you learn it from the fact that maybe she went and married somebody outside the family? Why? Because then we could learn three. La'avor aleh b'shlosha lavin. Then we would say that person transgresses three prohibitions, right? V'bayit ema. And if you want, I would say, lachar mita. In that case, we don't use that example because it could be after she died. All right, let's go on now. All right, we'll go as far as we can in the time designated. All right. Okay, we're now getting to the riddles. All right, and I'll sort of explain it, but you really need to see inside, okay, to get it. All right. The following situation: Ach me'av v'lo em, a brother from the father, but not from the mother. V'hu ba'ala da'em, and this is the husband of the mother. Va'ana barte da'antate, and I am the daughter of his wife. Okay, right? That's the example. How is that possible? Amar Rami Bar Chama, Delo Rabbi Yehuda. This can't be according to the view of Rabbi Yehuda, the matnitin of our Mishnah. Right? Why? Because he would not see
Judah
that.
says that a son cannot marry, and who says
Right. He says the son can't marry the woman who is seduced by the father.
so.
Okay.
So now the exam. Now he's going to explain.
Okay, another further example. Achu ubarihu. He's my brother, and he's also my son. Achte ana dahai de darina akatvai. And I am the sister of the one that I'm carrying on my shoulders. In other words, how can she be both his sister and his mother?
Because the father raped
gonna get-
her.
right,
and
that's
had
what we're
the-
gonna
and the
get to.
had- right.
All right? Mishkachad la, we find this situation, ba'oved kochavim, with regards to Gentiles, haba al habito,
No.
who had relations with his own daughter. Okay? Incest, right? Shloma lach bari. Okay, another riddle. One says to a child, hello, my son, bat achotech ana. I am the daughter of your brother. Okay. What? Right, I'm the daughter of your sister. How do we find that? Mishkachad la ba'oved kochavim. We find it in an example of a Gentile, haba'al bat bito, who had relations with his daughter of his daughter, with his maternal granddaughter. Okay. All right. Next, another riddle. Delai, the dalu, davla. Okay, that deals with pulling up pails of water, drawing water from pails. Vilipo bacho satar patar. Dahai darina hu bar va'ana barat achva. Again, I draw water from the same well, all right, and so on, and I become the what I guess the embryo, the child of the son, right? Va'ana barat achva, and I am also the daughter of the brother. Right? How is that all possible? Mishkachad la ba'oved kochavim. We find it again in the example of a Gentile. Haba'al bat beno, who has relations with his son's daughter, with again a granddaughter through the son. Okay. Now the Gemara picks up and says, bye bye, whoa, whoa. Okay, again, somebody statement to another family member. Whoa, whoa, me'ach, from a brother. Vahu av, and he's the father. Vahu baal, and he's the husband. Vahu bar baal, and he's also the son of the husband. Vahu baala the aim, and he's the husband of the mother. Va'ana, and I, barta de itatai, and I am the daughter of his wife. Okay? Velo yahiv pita la'achva yatme b'nei barte. And there is not even bread for the brothers, okay, who are like orphans to the son of the wife. Okay, how do we find this complicated situation? Mishkachad la ba'oved kochavim. Again, we find it possibly in the Gentile families, right? Haba al imo, one who had relations with his own mother. V'holid mimena bat, and he had a daughter with his mother, which makes that daughter both his daughter and his sister. Okay, v'chazar uba al otabat, and then he had relations with that woman, with that daughter. Okay, and then furthermore, v'chazar zakein, and then the elder, namely his father. Okay, right? Uba aleha, he had relations with that daughter. Okay, v'holid mimena banim, and she produced sons from him. Okay,
I think that goes on in
I don't know. There was a famous movie with Jack Nicholson. Okay, I don't remember the name of the movie right offhand. Okay, but at the end of the movie, it turns out there was a situation described of incest. Right?
You think that the woman might not want to marry the relatives of the man who raped her, that she might have discomfort about that?
Who knows? All right, another example. Ana, I, va'at achi. I and you are brother and sister. You're my brother, she says. Ana va'avuch achi. I and your father is my brother. Ana v'imech achi. You and your mother is my related, right? Mishkachet la ba'oved kochavim. Again, we find it in the example of Gentiles. Ba'al imo, where one has had relations with his mother. Vaholid mimena shtei banot, and he produced 2 daughters. V'chazar u'ba'al echat mehen, and then he came back and he had relations with one of them. Vaholid mimena ben, and he produced a son with her. V'karya le achte de'ime, and we call him, right, the brother of the mother. V'ka'amre le hachi, and that's how we say it. And now another riddle. Ana va'at banai, you and I are cousins. Okay, banai achai, we're cousins. Ana va'avuch banai achai, you and your father, we are cousins. Ana v'imech banei achai, you and your mother, we are cousins. Ha b'hatera, nami mishkachadla. But in this case, says the Gemara, and that's why I made my pshat, in this case, we find it may be a permissible kind of situation, right? How is it possible? All right, we are going to have 3 brothers here, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Okay, the Gemara would have been nice if it had told us that at the outset. Okay, all right.
The old guy.
Okay, not quite. All right, what happens? Kigon Reuven sheyesh lo shtei banot. In a situation where Reuven has 2 daughters. Va'ata Shimon, and along comes Shimon, Reuven's younger brother, v'nasav chada minayu, and he marries one of his nieces. Okay? Va'ata bar Levi, and then the son of the 3rd brother, okay? All right? V'nasav chad minayu. He marries the other. He marries his cousin, basically. Okay? That's what he does. V'ka'amarle, and then we talk about him, Berei de Shimon, Levar Berei de Levi. Right? We're talking about the son of Shimon and the son of Levi. All right? So that's where. I'm going to continue for another few minutes till about 9:30, okay? All right, we'll get as much as we can. A new Mishnah. Zev asked the question about conversion. Baruch Shekivanta Zev. Right? Hagioret, the woman who converts. All right? Shinit Gairu Banehama, and her sons converted along with her. Okay? Lo Chotzin Velo Miyabnin. She does not have, they do not, those sons don't do chalitza for wives, or don't do yibum for wives. Why? We'll see. Afilu horato sharishon shelo b'kedusha. Even if the conception of the first one was not done in sanctity. In other words, she was still a goya then. V'leidato b'kedusha. But his birth was in sanctity. Namely, she had converted already. And when he was born, okay, he's born a Jew, right? V'hasheni, but the second child, the second brother, horato v'leidato b'kedusha. His conception and his birth was in sanctity. It was after she had converted, right? V'chein shivcha shenish tachrarora baneha'ima. And likewise, a female servant whose children were freed along with her. Gemara is going to go into it.
I was gonna ask, I think I was gonna ask something else. If someone he didn't convert yet, but he's married to an Erva, when he converts, is he forced to get rid of the Erva?
That's a good question. Let's see if the Gemara did. A woman who is prohibited by the Torah to be married, for him to marry. Okay? Says the Gemara. B'nei Yudin amta ish ruchrur. Okay? The sons of Yudin, okay, she was a female servant and were freed. Shara laho Rav Acha bar Yaakov leminsav neshei dahadade. And Rabbi Acha bar Yaakov permitted the divorced wives of these two freed slaves to marry the other brother. Okay? What happened? Amar le Rava, Rava says to Rav Acha, Vaha Rav Sheshet asar, but Rav Sheshet forbade. Amar le hu asar va'ana sharina. He forbade and I permit. Okay? Min ha'av v'lo min ha'em. From the father and not from the mother. Kuli amalo plige deshare. Okay? If they're brothers from the same mother, but not from the same, right? From the father and not from the same mother, everybody doesn't disagree that that's permitted for them to have married. Min ha'em v'lo min ha'av. If they're from the same mother and not from the same father, kuli amalo plige da'asir. Everybody is in agreement, okay, or they don't disagree that that's prohibited. Ki pligi, where do they disagree? Min ha'av u min ha'em, where one is a brother from the father and one is a brother from the mother. Man deshari, the one who permits, batar abad shadina, he rules after the father. Daha b'nei planya karulahu. Why? Because they're called the son of so-and-so. That's what they're called. V'Rav Sheshet karulahu nami b'nei plonit. And Rav Sheshet, however, also calls them the sons of Mrs. So-and-so. Or, right? V'ikadama. And there are those who phrase this story as follows. Palig Rav Acha bar Yaakov. Rav Acha bar Yaakov disagrees. Afilu ba'achin min ha'em. Even with brothers from the same mother. Umay tama, and what's the reasoning? Ger shenit gayer kekatan shenolad dami. A convert, when they become converted, is like a newborn. Okay? So that could be the answer to your questions there. In that case, he converts. Okay? Yes, she's an erva, but he's a Jew now, so he has to follow Jewish law. That's why he may have to. Okay?
And
All right.
Jewish law may not be in there.
Right? Tanan, we learn another brighter. Hagioret shenitgairu baneh ha'ima, the convert who converted with her sons, lo chotzin v'lo miyabnin. She doesn't have chalitza, the sons don't do chalitza or yibum. Mai tama, what's the reasoning? Lav mishum da asire, is it not because they're forbidden? No. De'ina b'torat chalitza v'yibum. No, because they are not within the perspective, the law of yibum. All right? V'sharya la'alma, and they are permitted forever. Ve'enhu nami sharu, and they are certainly permitted. V'hakatani, but it's taught in our text, afilu. In other words, afilu horato shorishon shelo b'kedusha. Why that language of even? If you're going to say it was because they were forbidden, hainu dikatani afilu, that's why they taught even. The afal gav derishon harato shelo b'kedusha, that even though the first time one, his conception was not in sanctity, v'leidato b'kedusha, and his birth was in sanctity. V'hasheni horato v'leidato b'kedusha, and the second one, his conception and birth was in sanctity. Ukshte imahot dami. It's as if they came from two separate mothers. Afilu hachi asire. Even in that case, it would be forbidden. Ele amat sharu. But if they say that it's permitted, maya filu. Why then did the Mishnah can turn the language even?
Right.
The afagav the travayu leidatan b'kedusha. That even though both of them were born in sanctity, va'ate le'echlufe b'Yisrael, that people might become confused that they were native-born Jews. Okay? Afilu hachi shari. Even in that case, okay, they would be permitted after the divorce to marry their brother's sister. Ikeda amre. And there are those who explain it the following. Hachinami mistabra desharo. Here it seems logical to say that they're permitted. The katani afilu, because they teach even. I amart bishlema sharu. If you simply said they were permitted, hainu de katani afilu. That's why they teach even. The afagav the travayu leidatan b'kedusha. That even though both of them are born in sanctity, the ate le'echlufe b'Yisrael, that people might confuse them as being born Jewish, are not converts, right? Afilu hachi sharu, even in that case they're permitted. Ela iamart asire, but if you said they were forbidden, maya filu, why then even? The afal gav, the rishon harato, shelo b'kedusha, v'leidato b'kedusha, that even though the first one, conception was not in sanctity and birth was in sanctity, v'hasheni horato v'leidato b'kedusha, and the second, he was born, conceived and born in sanctity, the kishte imahot dami, because they're like coming from two separate wives, two separate mothers, I'm sorry. Afilu hachi asiri. Even in that case, they would be prohibited. So the Gemara then picks up with a new Breita, and I think we'll stop there, and that's where we'll pick up tomorrow.
Thanks, Jeff, for calling. You did a
Okay.
wonderful job, Rabbi Dean.
All right.
Quote Louis Price, brothers from another mother. all the time.
Let me continue with my question. Even if he is a you're cut Chenola, he's born a Jew now. He's like a new person.
Right.
But he's still married to two women who were not allowed to be together.
So say hi to Paula for me.